Three members join us this morning, and they are
Heather Doyle.
If you'd rather leave the dancing to the professionals, you can head over to City Dance Studio Theater at Strathmore to see Rebollar Dance perform Space Jump. Choreographer and director Erica Rebollar created the modern dance piece, which explores the inner world of the subjective mind and the outer realm of the objective universe.
Washington Paper named you the most memorable dance performances of 2011. What is it about your art farm that really stays with the crowd?
I think we work with both the objective and subjective. So we're working very kinesthetically, viscerally, breathing, sweating, and we're also telling stories, and it's very personal.
Will you tell us a story?
We sure will.
When Erica first came to me about her ideas for Space Junk, I was really excited because I've always been sort of space enthusiast, so this was like really right up my alley. And at this time, I was thinking to myself how great it would be to have these kind of celestial projections. When it comes to projections, my biggest pet peeve or nightmare is projecting onto dancers while they dance. You know, we had worked with projections on Tinsel and Bone. It was more of a set piece than it was backdrop. And I remember walking into the space and I looked around and I said, where are we going to project this thing? Eventually, one of the dancers, Nate Bond, I wasn't there when it happened, but he was apparently lying on his back and looked up at the sails hanging from the ceiling. And so he came to the conclusion that we should project onto these sails. I looked at it and I said, wow, this is a really great idea. This is going to look terrific. And I really don't want to think about how we're going to do it right now, but just the idea is really terrific. It had never been done before at Strathmore, and the way we were going to do it pretty much ensured that it wasn't going to be done again, at least not for a long, long time. Erica wanted 2 projectors at once, and running 2 projectors wouldn't be that much of an issue. We would just have to split the signal. It kind of weakens the signal. It was kind of my initial hesitation, but as soon as I looked more into it, it became more of a very doable thing, and I would bounce ideas off of Erica how we were going to do this. So the main objective here was to find a way to project onto these very, very thin sails without the image leaking over onto the ceiling. And essentially what you need to do is something called alpha, and basically that is taking a portion of the video and only projecting this portion. So what we had to do was run the images in real time through editing software, which is something you're really not supposed to do. It's a terrible strain on the computer. So I was able to, by way of this video editing software, I was able to cut off the left and right side of the video and adjust it so that it would only project this single rectangular shape, despite the angle, despite the curvature of the sails, despite the image being rendered in real time to be projected and split between 2 projectors running simultaneously. I think it came out very brilliantly, and seeing images like the spaceship falling to Earth or the monkey for Nate's solo, or just simply the moon in the beginning and the end, I think was very, very powerful and very, very effective. And it gave Space Junk, I think Erica said once, like this feeling of dancing in a planetarium. It definitely gave it a life. I was just overall ecstatic that we had this really great, really original projection that wasn't over the top. It didn't play throughout the entire piece. You know, it wasn't the flagship of the piece. I don't think it was. It was complementary, and it was just one of the things that made Space Junk unique, and an experience that City Dance Strathmore Theater will be hard-pressed to replicate.
Erica and I met working for another DC choreographer named Sharon Manser a couple of years ago. When Erica started making work in the area, I joined her for the project, so I'm really happy to be back this season. And I'm really enjoying a very different process this time. Pencil and Bone was a very small group of folks, and Erica's in the piece as well. So this has been an interesting process being in a larger ensemble, and Erica taking herself out of the piece, so getting a little bit more direction from the outside. So there's been a lot of spontaneity as Erica intuits different things that she wants to see while we're running some of the movement. So that's been really cool to sort of see her stream of consciousness and her instincts take over. It's been really nice to rehearse at Strathmore. It's a little bit of a haul out of the city for me from Washington. I live in DC. But the studios are really beautiful, big wide windows, big open space. So I feel like I'm connecting sort of up into space even as we rehearse this work. So that's been really nice. And it's been nice to work with Nate again, but also a whole new set of folks who I know from different projects around the area. We've got Charlie back as our composer, and his music, having to work with it in rehearsal, and also for him to be editing and creating as we go has been really nice. And we've gotten a few opportunities to do feedback showings and have guests in our rehearsals, so that's also been very nice. And a good challenge as a performer, not just be projecting or dancing for an audience in front of you, but an audience all around you. I have enjoyed doing some very technical movement. It's been a good challenge for me because a lot of the work that I do is improvisation, so it's very sort of intuitive and personal. So that's been nice to have the challenge of doing that in the dance, but then also to recapture some of my personal memories. It's not just about the finished product, it's about the process. And I really enjoy having hours and hours a week to be creating something and to be changing during the process, and to let it change me and change and grow the relationships with the people that I dance with. So fostering a sense of cohesion and community and shared experience with the designers, the dancers, with Erica, and how it can go back and inform the rest of my life.
For Space Junk, we started working in July. There were two dancers that I've been working with for 2 years now, Nate Bond and Heather Doyle. And through them and the dance community, I found 3 new amazing dancers: Amber Jean Teichens, Yoko Feynman, and also Kirsten Lindsay. I knew that manipulating space and time in the group pieces was going to be challenging. I had also separated the dancers into 2 separate rehearsals, so I can also start working with them on their duets and their solos and trios. I started to get to know the 3 new dancers a lot better, and their ways of moving and their ideas behind Space Junk. And over time I was able to work with them more to pull out their strengths. I started working with Chelsea Schuler about halfway through the piece. We've worked together in the past on other projects. She noticed that the piece obviously was about space, and it was also about technique and algorithms, manipulating positionings of the dancers. and she watches the piece, and through knowing what the piece is about and conversations with her, she designs a sketch of the costumes, which she gave to me. So we went back and forth on that. She came in and took the measurements of the dancers, designed the costumes that I felt in the beginning were too perfect looking, and I did want some junkiness to it. So we turned the dancers around and cut out, ripped up portions of the back of their costumes. So the front looked sleek and the back looked like something was wrong with it, much like space junk. And then also working with colors and going back and forth about the different types of tones and how they would work well together. And we actually ended up switching the tops and the bottoms of a lot of the costumes so things didn't look too uniform. With the composer, Charlie Campagna, I've been working with him for 10 years now. I met him in, 2003 in Los Angeles. He works for a film studio, and he works as a sound librarian for the film studio. So he pulled out all of the sounds that related to space and that related to machines. I was especially in love with a certain sound that a servo motor makes, and those are the motors that lifts up and down like genies or cranes, or if you press eject in your VCR, it's that whining sound. He had used that sound for me before, and I was struck with how a machine can also make an emotional landscape. So through working with him, I've been on the East Coast now since 2003. So we've gone back and forth like this quite often, where I will give him a general map and a general set of instructions for him to play with. And then as the piece progresses, I become clear about specific timings and emotional landscapes, climaxes, and when it's time to drop out and when it's time to build up, and how to do that together. So through back and forth, him sending me tracks and me refining them and sending back more detailed instructions, we were able to collaborate together on a bi-coastal collaboration basis. The dancers started working with a set of phrases that I had choreographed, which I then asked them to manipulate and variate. And it was really interesting to see what they did with my movement and how they internalized it and put it into their body. It was very, very, very challenging, especially in the beginning of the process, as most of the variations were similar because they derive from the same similar movement. So it was hard to memorize, it was hard to execute, and to piece it together in a way that it developed kind of a mechanical-like structure. We started working with how does your body move if no one's watching, or how do you move in private spaces? How is your body when you're in your bedroom different than when you're on the street? What happens to the movement systems? Also, dealing with memories, to be able to take a memory and recreate it from the movement. So I would say, take a memory from your childhood and trace the pathways. How did you move? What were you doing? So without even having to explain the memory, I wanted them to be in the landscape of more of a mental space and less of a rigid, formulaic physical space. Once we had all those pieces together, it was about refining the ups and the downs. When is the audience seeing too much movement and too much confusion, and when does it need to settle down? After it's settled down, how long does the settling need to take before something starts to happen and build? through structured improvisation and also through a lot of assignments that I gave the dancers, I started to notice things that I wouldn't have been able to create had I just choreographed and told them what to do and when to do it. And those things, as they started taking shape, led the piece in new directions. So I think that's what's the most exciting part for me about choreography is noticing things happening and letting it come out and letting it bloom, and noticing when unusual things start to develop that I would have never thought of myself. About 1 month into the process of the piece, I wanted to challenge myself in the beginning by making more three-dimensional spiral movement. Instead of the traditional proscenium stage expectation that this is front and everything behind me is hidden. I had no intention of making theater in the round because I knew I was already going to be experimenting with projection, and that's its own set of challenges. But about 1 month into the process, my dancer Heather Doyle said this could be seen from any side, which I hadn't thought of before. As we proceeded to make the piece, I wasn't exactly sure if the theater was capable of producing a theater in the round experience, but I was keeping an eye on different angles that the piece could be seen from. About halfway into the process, 3 months, I got the confirmation that we were able to do theater in the round. I had never done that before. I've seen it done where the audience sits on two different sides and the performers are performing in one direction. I think the biggest challenge that I wanted to make was I did not want the audience to notice what front we were using when we originally started the piece. I wanted it to be absolutely 50-50. The audience could sit anywhere without a preference to any side. As we began working, it was facing in one direction, so we continuously kept switching the facings and the directions in which the audience could see the performers. The feedback showings were really important. We had 2 feedback showings about 2 and 3 weeks right before the show. And Hellenius Wilkins from Edgeworks and also Chris Morgan from Christopher K. Morgan and Dancers gave me the great idea of accentuating what we had already done is walking simply in a line towards the audience members and looking at them directly and kind of taking away the dancer performativity and just simply standing there and watching the audience and having that eye-to-eye connection with them. As that seemed to be a highlight for them, I played with it even more and stretched it out and had the dancers do that in facing all 4 directions. So at one point during the piece, the audience is making a direct connection eye-to-eye with the dancers. I am extremely pleased with Space Junk. I do think that it's my best work so far. It's definitely the most complex work. The challenges that we made working with projection and working with the theater in the round were successful. The audience turnout was absolutely successful. The appreciation and the commitment of the dancers as they were engaging in a creative and difficult process was successful. The feedback session at the end of each performance showed me that the audience was absolutely engaged and they were asking very intelligent questions. The successful reviews from the Washington Post and Montgomery County Times and all of the feedback from the piece was very positive. I especially think that the most successful aspect was the entire process itself. It was a smart, intelligent, deep, questioning, thoughtful approach to making movement. that I will absolutely continue into the future. The decisions that we made were based on intelligent experimentations, observations, and research, which made the entire outcome of Space Junk the most successful piece to date. Space Junk is different than any process that I had made before. Usually I'm dancing in the piece because I wanted to have more of a bird's eye view. I didn't put myself in the piece, which made for an interesting process. I see Space Junk in the future touring. I see it being performed again. I think when I'm making the piece, what I'm doing the most is what would I want to see. I often watch performances and I get bored, so I'm thinking how to be unpredictable, how to do a movement or a feeling or a pattern that no one's ever done before. Twyla Tharp, in her book, she writes, when a dance is right, it just seems inevitable. But there's a lot of work that has to go into the, creation of, or the result of the dance looking inevitable. I don't think I could have switched the sections of the piece around. I think that they were kind of set in stone, and we were just excavating what it was. I think the thing that made Space Junk the most interesting was the timing. I couldn't have predicted, and it wasn't what I'm used to in terms of my habitual timings. So it had this very strange, bizarre, almost alien rhythm to it that was fascinating for me and has never been done before. In terms of the future, besides wanting to tour and perform the piece again, a lot of dancers and choreographers refer to the time after a performance as postmortem depression. I think it comes from so much expectation and excitement and so much planning and so many rehearsals and dealing with tech and lights and music and all this excitement leading up to a performance. And the excitement afterward as well, when the reviews come in and the reviews are positive, friends from the dance community attend and give constructive feedback, and everybody's generally really jazzed up. Then afterward, about a few days later, it just seems like everything's quiet again, and that's where I'm at right now. I still enjoy looking at what was accomplished. I'm watching the videos and the videographer and the photography from the show, and winding down on that aspect, and also jumping right into thinking about new pieces. But I always feel like there's that sense of very quiet stillness. I had a teacher, Neil Greenberg, talk about what the cycle of a performance is like, where in the spring is the research mode, where things are coming to fruition, the beginning of the process is starting, and everything's young and new and blooming, and how the summertime is a time of rich, fertile growth, and digging into the idea of a piece. And the performance of the piece is almost like fall, where the leaves are falling away, it's come to fruition, and now things have to kind of shed its skin. And how in the winter, like a frozen seed inside of the ground is dormant, but waiting to come to fruition in the in the spring when it blooms again. The piece was a lot like that, Space Junk was. It started, the idea started forming in the very end of winter is when I was writing the proposals and the grants. And the ideas for the Meet Theater Lab program that sponsored the piece as well as City Dance. In the spring is when I was collecting all of the research, and the summer is when the dancers and I were heavy in the middle of the process working together. And right as the last leaves were falling off the trees is when we actually performed the piece. So right now it feels like winter, and it is winter. It's snowing, the leaves are off the tree, everything seems very dormant, the piece is over. There's this deep sense of satisfaction that things turned out well, the designers were happy, the dancers were happy, the audiences were happy. And I feel a deep sense of satisfaction with what happened and the outcome of Space Junk. And right now just enjoying the holiday, the winter break, where things are very quiet and kind of laying dormant for the next two spring shows, one in the spring and one in the summer. So I find that that's the process of any piece. The most important thing that makes me happy is to continue to make cutting edge work that is fun for the dancers, fun for me, fun for the audience. It's almost like a problem-solving experiment or riddle or puzzle for everybody to solve together. I feel like the greater mission of modern dance is to create a sense of humanity that we don't see on TV and that we're not given in the movies, something that's honest and real and visceral and based on the individual of the reality of people that often gets diluted in our mainstream society. We are an underground dance form, we are an underground art, and we are the least funded, and we have the least health insurance out of all of the different art forms. And so because of that, we have to create grassroots structures where the modern dance community supports and nurtures itself and finds a closeness and a togetherness, even in the hard economic times and the suffering. Because of its grassroots, because of the idea of dance being such an underground enterprise, it's fundamentally a grassroots organization, which is why the USA Arts Campaign and other campaigns like Indiegogo and Kickstarter are absolutely so fundamental for the life of an emerging arts organization, especially modern dance. I'm so appreciative that you contributed to Space Junk and also to modern dance, and that you also want to come and see real people sweating on stage as opposed to watching a movie or watching Dancing with the Stars on TV. So often we forget about the lives of artists as we watch a performance and what their reality is. And I think that by contributing to the campaign, you understood that and that you care. And that means a lot to me. Thank you so much.